Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our Wednesday Montessori Leadership Forum. Today we have a very special guest. I am Kathy Leach, and on behalf of the International Montessori Council and the Montessori Foundation, I'm happy to be your host today. Very nice to see everyone today. See good friends, old friends, new friends, lots of people joining us today for this really important topic. We're very excited to have with us today Cristina Di Stefano. And Cristina, as most of you know, is an author and has been a journalist. And she has a very exciting book that's, I think, of interest to all of us right now that we're going to be talking more about today. The Child is the Teacher, Maria Montessori's life. And it's got all kinds of things in it that we maybe didn't know before, or maybe we had some different ideas about before. And so we're going to have Cristina fill us in on all kinds of things that she's done in researching this very important contribution to our understanding of Dr. Montessori. I'm joined with me today by a couple of colleagues, Jonathan Wolf, an IMC board member and Montessori Foundation senior consultant, international lecturer, workshop presenter, author, and poet. And we're so happy to have you with us today, John. Tanya Reiskind, also from the Montessori Foundation, and is head of school at our lab school in Sarasota, Florida, the Newgate School. Cheryl Allen is here, works with us at the Montessori Family Alliance. So many of you have been contributing every week and come and join us for these important conversations. So thank you again for being here today. And Cristina, I'd like to maybe have you share a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and how you came to learn about the life of Dr. Maria Montessori.
Hi, everybody. I was scrolling the list of faces. We are really a lot of people. Thank you for being here and for inviting me. As you were saying, I'm a journalist, and I write biography, and I'm not at all an expert of pedagogy or Maria Montessori. I didn't know anything about her 5 years ago. I hope I am a specialist of great women. That's my interest. I always try to write books about great women that can be a source of inspiration for my readers. And that's how I decided to start this difficult research about Maria Montessori. When why I decided to work on Maria Montessori, it was 6 years ago now, and it was because I read a newspaper article about her, and I was surprised to learn that she died in Holland in 1952. For me, it was a surprise, the date and the place. So I say what she was doing in Holland, and I was convinced she was a woman I didn't know she died in the 50s. So I was shocked by my ignorance on her, and I started to read something because as I say, I'm a fan of biography, and I wasn't happy of what I was reading. There were always the same information, not enough for my curiosity. And on the other side, I would say I was surprised by the gap between the fact that Maria Montessori is a brand everywhere. If you say this name, everyone knows what you are talking about. Everyone visualize, the little kids working with the cubes and everything. And the lack of information about her, I would say I was intrigued by the fact that she's so famous, but at the same time, she was not very incarnated as a person. So I think that was the trigger for me. I said to myself, I can't talk about the pedagogy, but maybe there is something to do about the person, the real person in flesh and blood. Because my impression because I ordered on Amazon a lot, and I said, I read a lot about their thinking, and about their ideas, but I would say, I wasn't satisfied about their life. I wanted to know more. So I decided to try to research more. So to be honest, my my plan was to give more flesh, more reality to this thinker, because I had the impression that it was everyone was writing about their ideas, but not everyone was really getting deep in the digging in the life. That was the idea, I would say.
Yeah, so I want to remind all of our participants that we're happy to have you ask any questions or give comments if you've read the book. I will put a link to the book if you are interested. Our purpose here isn't to sell the books, but it is having read the book and having gone back and looking at rereading the book, because the first time I read the book, I thought, oh my goodness, there's a lot here that I didn't know. Having been a student of Montessori for many years, there were things I didn't know, and there were a lot of things I had questions about. So we'll be happy to share that information. Many of you have heard about some of the reviews that have been done, things like that. So feel free to ask questions. If you'd like to unmute, please use the reactions button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you click on that, you can raise your virtual hand. Since on my screen, I have multiple screens here of people, so I wouldn't be able to see you. So it would be better to use that. And of course, you can always use the chat function also at the bottom of your screen. And it's a great way. We always have robust conversations going on in the chat. So we will be monitoring that as well. So Christina, I'm intrigued that, you didn't know a lot about her. And then you thought, there are other stories about her, other biographies, and I wonder, I'm sure we're familiar with those or aware of those as you started doing your research. So what was missing that you really needed to explore?
No, of course, I started from the American biography of Sylvia Kramer. But I said to myself, okay, this has been written in the 70s, so half a century is a lot in terms of papers and documents. And then when I read the other, mainly Italian and French books, they were all books inside the Montessori movement, and that was also something that intrigued me, that apart from Sylvia Kramer, all the other books were books written by her disciples or followers. And I said to myself, I want to try to explain Maria Montessori to the general readership. Because my impression when I started to read, when I was, after 2 or 3 books, it was that probably this woman, it was the moment, I would say, to get her out of the school and the pedagogy, and to try to explain to the large public who is not into the school or education what this woman was. So maybe of course, it's when you write a biography, you are always a little bit, I don't know how to say in English, but you think you can do it. So I can't find the word in English, sorry, but I said to myself, I can put let's say my skill as a biographer and also my complete neutrality and ignorance of the pedagogy as a strength, because maybe I will ask the stupid questions. When you are on a new planet, you ask all kind of questions. When you are born in this country, in this planet called the Montessori, maybe you don't ask this question because you never thought about it. So I don't hide that I was very worried about this project. It was probably the project that created more problem to myself while I was working. But at the same time, I hoped that the fact that I was external to the movement and to the pedagogy, I was not an expert, could be good in some moment. So that's what was lacking in the book I have read. I wanted to know more about her personal life, for sure, because I'm curious. I wanted to understand more the relationship with the fascists, because it was always very flu. Let's say it was not clear why she started and then she got away. I wanted to understand more about I would say the relationship with also the spirituality, because I understood immediately that there was some Italian scholar underlined the religious element and other absolutely against this. So I said to myself, there is something here. There is when there is polemics, there is something to dig. So that's the thing. And in any case, as a biographer, you always hope and think you can add something. Otherwise, you will never have a new biography of Jesus Christ or Julio Cesare or Napoleon. I'm not sure. When I started my project, I wasn't sure I could do something different. So, you know, it's like this.
Well, those of us who are familiar with your work will certainly say that you have added to the story and contributed to what our understanding of someone that we, think we have some familiarity with, and particularly, obviously, we have more with the pedagogy, and getting to know her as a human being, I think, is, such an just a different way to view someone that many of us put on a pedestal and, think a certain thing about and make some assumptions about. And like you say, your curiosity, I think, probably was the thing that you didn't have those assumptions that many of us have about Maria Montessori. So I appreciate that. I'd like to hear more about your process of research, but I'm going to go to Karen Kelly first, because Karen has her hand up and I'm sure she has something wonderful to contribute.
Karen, hi.
Unmute, please.
Yeah,
just took me a minute to my mouse. All right. I just was wondering, are you familiar with, I love your book. I have sticky notes all over it. Thank you very much for writing it. It just brought such another dimension of Montessori into my imagination. So thank you so much for writing the book. And I was just curious, like, I've always wished that the greater world's population could have an understanding of who she was and what she's done. Are you familiar with the Genius series on National Geographic that was put out by Ron Howard? They have Einstein, Picasso, and Aretha Franklin. They did three different series of those three people. And I've always dreamed, oh, wouldn't it be wonderful if Ron Howard would do Maria Montessori, and you've provided a wonderful book here that maybe he could start with. Anyway, can I send your book to him?
That's a very interesting question, because my main job is to be a literary scout. That's how I earn my life. I scout. I pitch book to publisher in other languages and to TV producer. I work for Netflix, I work for Ben J. I work for big, but when I was working on the book, I didn't think at all about this dimension, because I was in the writing process. I've never watched Genius, but I know about this project, and I know about this guy who is very famous. But and you're right, she could absolutely be one of them. The problem is that my book has been optioned by a French-American tour producer. Mm-hmm. And they, of course, I don't know if you know a little bit how the television movie world works, but they are always very secret, and so you can't say the names. But I know that they will do, they are very ambitious, and they want to do a big international series on her life. So we will have for sure something. It will be not Genius, unfortunately, because they came first to my agent. But I'm really happy that this book can trigger something serious on an international level, because the idea is to do at least one season, a limited series on 8 episodes or maybe more about our life. So I think we have to wait, because it's always a long process, but we will have this, and I will meet the two producers in Paris in a couple of months to know more. And that's a little bit what I wanted to do with the book. I think that Maria Montessori is one of the great thinkers of our time. So I think it was the moment to say to the people outside education, hey, there is this Italian lady who was a visionary, who had ideas really ahead of her times, and ideas that still work on or question our thinking. So in a sense, you are right, and I wait for the result of this option, but I'm not at all in the process of I'm outside of the project. I just accepted to give the, how it works, to give the option on my book to two producer in America and in France to study the book and see if they can produce something big. If it doesn't work, it can be wrong.
I think that's great news for all of us. And Karen, I appreciate you asking that question. I think that would be absolutely fascinating for us to see. Not only is it good for more people to know Dr. Montessori and her life and her work, but it really, I think, is so affirming for those of us who've committed our lives to this work. So we'd love to see that happen. I know you don't have control over that, but we'll all stay hopeful.
On the timing and not on the result, but the good news is that there are professionals working on it. So we will see.
Yeah, that's very, very good news. Again, go ahead. If you have a question, you can go ahead and raise your hand or put it in the chat. And otherwise, I will continue on because I have a lot of questions. One of the things I'm curious about, Christina, is the process that you use to research, because it really does seem as though you discovered some things that many of us weren't aware of. And so what was your process? Obviously different than some of the other biographers.
When I work on a biography, I feel like a detective. For me, there is it's a case. So you have to undig everything. So my method with Maria Montessori was absolutely like with all the other women. And to be honest, for example, I didn't contact the Montessori movement. I say to myself, don't go there, because you have to handle this woman as any other great woman of the past, and don't start from my world, because that will be the last. So that was the first choice. I also, because I was worried, to be honest, to rise, who are you to work on her? So I wanted to be more, solid on my. So the main method that I have always when I work on a biography is I put a list of all the places and all the archives and all the people that can have something on her. And of course, I can't do that by myself. I always have a couple of researchers, I don't know how to say, people doing this for me in different countries. And so after I read a lot, I read all the books that I could find on her, and all her books also that are not always easy to read, to be honest. I was often lost in the reading process. I made a huge list of all the places, like the Humanitarian Society in Milano, and for example, I discovered anyone has never gone there. So they had a lot of material. They even didn't have a list of all the material. So I had to put a person, and as I went to Barcelona, I went to Rome, I went to Amsterdam. It was not easy in the beginning. I went to, so my method was to to be curious to every lead, you can say lead, every path, every possibility, to establish a list and to go there. And the surprise was that I found a lot of new material, new letters, new, for example, in particular, the Società Umanitaria, I don't know if you know what this is, but it was a socialist institution in Italy at the time of her life, and it still exists, even if the archives have been damaged by the war, let's say. When I was there, I realized that was a real mine, because you had not only a big epistolary between Maria Montessori and the director of the president of the society, an epistolary that has never been published, but also I found a mine of material on the production of the didactic material, the prices, so it was really, that was the method, I would say, to go through all the archives, and only on a second step to contact the scholars and the Montessori movement, I would say. I was half shy, half worried, and also probably a little part of me wanted to stay outside this, because I said, okay, all the material that the Montessori movement has control and knows is in all this big amount of books I've read. So there were people that didn't want to meet me, and people that accepted to meet me. There were people that accepted to meet me, but said, okay, don't quote me. Mm-hmm. That was very, very often the case. I don't know why. A lot of sources asked me, they even share great material, but they didn't want this to be known. So I got also that there is something that I don't understand, because I think that when you have an historical figure like Maria Montessori, you should share with the other people all the material you have. But I respect this. I'm a journalist, so I can cover my sources. And so I had access of a lot of material. Some material I couldn't really quote, but it was really interesting. It was, in any case, it's very, when you write about, when you research a life, it's very important to have every single pieces of the puzzle. And then even if you can't, quote this letter or this, I don't know, picture, for example, I had a lot of beautiful picture that I couldn't use. You can use all this information to recreate the story. And I had the same problem with other biography in the past, so I was prepared to this. To be honest, I also learned from my mistakes in the past. Just to give you a funny example, when I was researching my first biography, I was young and naive. I was researching about an Italian poetess and novelist, which she could be described as the Italian Emily Dickinson, a great figure here in Italy. And I discovered an incredible exchange of letters between her and a very good friend of her. And I was so excited because it was completely, unedited and new, and it was important because it described the end of her life. So it was very important. And I made a big mistake. I asked to photocopy, to reproduce this letter instead of reading first. I was in this archive. I undid this treasure, and they say, okay, can I copy this material? And the lady in the archive say, okay, if you want to copy, we have to ask to the owner of this archive. And then the lady read the letter, and she said to me, oh, no, I can't share this letter with you. They are too personal. And I remember, Katie, I was ready to kill the lady because I was there. She was on the other side of the table, and all the letters were there. And I didn't read it. So that was lost forever for me, because then I sent even another person to research, but they were gone from the archive. So I learned from this mistake, and in the case of other books and Maria Montessori, which is the last, I read first, I photographed first, and then I asked permission. And in general, I didn't have the permission, but I had the document.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So you, I'm sure, read a lot and tried to retain everything. So if you couldn't publish it or have access to it, you still, as you say, kind of gives you context for that.
Because sometimes people don't know they have this material in their papers, you know. So it's, for me, this was a great lesson. You acquire all the information first. We can do like a spy. You make the photo when other people are not looking at you, and then you see that you can use this material. But you acquire all the information first.
Yeah, yeah,
so
interesting.
it was also great fun. It was sometimes it was frustrating, but it was, this is the part I like in writing biography. The part I love is writing, because it's when you finish this work, which takes years, and then you write the book, it's a kind of, you are like God. You have everything and you create a life, no? So of course you can be mistaken, but it's a great sensation. You have all this material in front of you. You have all the letters of the picture of you have a huge amount of information, and there is a moment when everything gets together, and writing is a real gift. It's blessed, I would say. But the other element that I like in the biography research is the thrilling. It's like really being a detective. It's like an action movie. There are moments that, they call you, one of your people call you and say, Christina, I found this. And you say, okay, send me. It's very exciting to go in this, let's say, search and quest.
Yeah, I like your reference to, having a puzzle, like putting all the puzzle pieces, right? You're bringing everything back together and putting these puzzle pieces together. Was there anything in particular that really surprised you, or, you went in without this preconceived notion or assumptions like we all had, but at the same time, this is a very unique woman, very different for her time. Any thoughts or anything that really surprised you?
A lot. But first of all, I didn't have any pre-concept. So it was, I was really virgin in this sense. But just to make an example, because when you research a life, it's difficult because nobody has the answer. Even the people that know her very well said to me, we don't know about this. For example, just to make an example, I was surprised because she ended the primary school when she was 13. And that didn't make sense to me. Why? So at a certain, because you end the primary school at 10. So what did she do for 3 years? No. So at the beginning I say, okay, I studied, it was a long process. I studied all the rules, the historical books about the school at the time in Italy. And I discovered that the year she passed from the primary school to the secondary school, it was the year when a bill was passed in Italy that permitted to the girls to go to the. So I said, okay, so she stayed at home waiting for this. And in fact, no, when I dig more, I discovered that she was, she had to repeat the school. So she was a very bad student at the primary school. So that's an example. You have elements, but you still have, let's say, you are never sure. You always have to doubt the elements. And that, for example, was a surprise for me, discovering that Maria Montessori was a very bad student at the beginning of her career. She really hated the school, in a sense. And the other element that not surprised, but it intrigued me a lot, was discovering the relationship between Maria Montessori and Edouard Seguin, which I think is an incredible man, that he probably he deserves a biography of his own, but I don't have time. Because it's a great story, Edouard Seguin, who died in America, and who invented the term, thermometer, I would say, the
thermometer.
device to get your temperature.
Mhm.
And I didn't know anything about this. I discovered this man. So I went to Paris. I live in Paris. I tried to find this material, and I realized that the French people didn't know anything about him. It was completely forgotten. So that was a surprise to see how she created something in a line with another genius before her.
Mhm.
But there were a lot of surprise, of course. It's difficult to, I would say every chapter was a surprise. The real problem for me, that's why this book was difficult, is that I was dealing with a thinker. Not because I like to tell the story of a life. That's what I like. I like to read about Steve Jobs. But here we have a thinker with a lot of ideas. So I was worried to say stupid things. So I read and read again about her and all her books, and I went to a kind of a training with a Montessori teacher in the north of Italy to see all the materials, because my main problem was this. Okay, I can tell a life, but I have to be very careful when I tell a thought, because I have to be sure of what I am saying. So that was the part that was more challenging for me, because I couldn't avoid say something about ideas, but I tried to say the what was indispensable for the story, but I didn't want to go further because that's not my field. So it was tricky for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I was also surprised by the story about Maria Montessori not being a good student. And as I read, well, first of all, I thought it was really fortuitous that she got out right when they passed the bill that she could go to secondary school. And I was surprised she wanted to go after she had had such a miserable experience in the primary school. I thought, what was it that motivated her to say, yes, I want to go on, other than she was such a trendsetter and wanted to, really make a difference with her life, and seemed to know that from a very young age.
For sure. I think Maria Montessori was very ambitious, very conscious of her own intelligence,
Mhm.
and probably suffering a little bit of the time she was born in, because she was really a great woman. So in another time, in our time, she could have been, a politician, a leader. So probably she went through let's say, the difficult process of the school, because she knew that was the only way to do something big of her life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Tanya and I were speaking about the book this week, and one of the things that we said, and I know you and I talked about this, Christina, that we sometimes perceive her as a victim, Dr. Montessori. And Tanya's point was she was only a victim of the time she was born. And I thought that was really an important thing for us to keep in mind, that, the time she was born put restrictions. She seemed to plow through that pretty well, though, with her choices and her decision.
Yeah. And every time when I was writing and looking into all the elements, I keep reminding me she was a Victorian lady. She was 30 at the turn of the century. That's a lot. So you have to keep this in mind, because her way of acting and her way of thinking is so modern that you tend to forget about this, that you tend to forget that she was unmarried. She didn't have a job. She didn't have a position. She was a complete maverick. So just for this, she's a striking woman. Then you have all the ideas, but I think that only for her life, she's amazing. Apart from the great ideas of her life, I would say only for what she achieved by herself. I think this is incredible. So in the end, I got out of this book with a great, I am impressed by this lady, to be honest, really impressed. I found myself defending her in a lot of TV shows in Italy or in France, but not because I'm a Montessorian, but because I see the great woman she was, even with all the problem, the controversial element that she was not perfect like everyone, but she was really impressive, I think, as a human being. Incredible.
Yeah, very impressive. I just want to remind our participants, this is the quietest they've ever been. So they're obviously very intrigued by what you're sharing with us today.
Or maybe I talk too much, like all the
No.
Italians.
We're very happy to hear from you and hear these stories. But I know one of the questions that's on everyone's mind. Oh, I got Jonathan. Jonathan's going to ask a question. So I'll give it over to him and then I'll come back to one of my questions.
I was listening to you when you said you defended her. What kinds of things did you defend her? And what kinds of issues did you defend her on? Misperceptions or people's judgments of her? Where did you come to her defense?
Mainly people tend to say that she is old style, her ideas are old. That's typical. And I always say they are not old. We didn't apply our ideas, so they are still on the table. They are not old. They are still there. Like it's like saying that the gospel is old. Okay, we still have to realize the reign of God. So that's the first. I would say the first criticism is always, oh, this is old. This is old. She was in another time. And I always say the great ideas have no time, I think. So we still have to think about this. And the other, of course, the other criticism, in particular in Italy, is the fascism. And people tend to forget that everyone was fascist in Italy at that time. That's a great rimozione, we would say in Italian. I don't know, removal. No, we tend to think that all the Italians were against Mussolini, which was absolutely untrue. And the third criticism, very common, is about her being a businesswoman, her being rich because of the material and because she wanted to be paid and everything. So a lot of people tend to criticize this, and I always answer, okay, first of all, if she was a woman, if she was a man, probably we didn't have all these criticisms, because if you are Einstein and you become also rich, you're a genius. And second, I always repeat, as I was saying to Katie, she was unmarried, she was without a job and a position, so she had to earn her life with her ideas. So I think that the relationship of Maria Montessori with money, as I write in the book, was very free. She when she was rich, she was spending a lot. When she wasn't rich, she was spending less. She was not after the money. Even if I think, and sometimes I was attacked when I said that, but I think this. She probably wanted to do something from the economical point of view for her son. I think that she was feeling guilt, in a sense, of what was happening with the son. So she wanted to create some, let's say, financial ground for Mario. But that's, I think, also something that you can understand in a mother. She wanted to repair a little bit what she had done by leaving him very young. So that, I would say, there are the three main criticisms that I hear. And I don't know, I always say to this journalist that people tend to criticize her instead of thinking about what she said. So in the end, we don't go on, because instead of say, okay, but probably there is something here we have to discuss about the child, about the way we treat the child. In every moment, we tend to criticize all these aspects. But for me, it's often a way to avoid the real point, which is that our ideas are so radical and so new that they still create a problem to people. They prefer not to. And the fourth criticism, very common, is, oh, she created a school for the rich, the kids of the rich. That's very strong in Italy and France. They say this is only for the rich.
Oh, so you've given us very clear answers to some of these pushbacks. You're getting some of the objections. What do you say about that one? We have dealt with that quite a bit here in the US, and I'm sure around the world that has been a big criticism recently. And I just wonder what's your response to that?
My response is, first of all, to stress out what I say in the book, that she began with very poor children. So don't forget that she started her theories in the slums of Rome. So the other, no, completely opposite from the rich. And the second point is that I say that, I repeat, and I think that the rich, the wealthy people, the elite, are always very interested in the education of their kids, because they know that that's the way, no? So if what happened is that the Anglo-Saxon, mainly elite, saw the potential of the ideas of Maria Montessori, and they went to her, and they know that, you know the story better than me. So in the end, for me, this is just the demonstration of the fact that her ideas were brilliant, because the people who had the possibility to apply the idea was really, they wanted this for their kids. While the state school in Italy, in France, they didn't care about the results, because they didn't care about the children. So for me, this is just a confirmation that the wealthy people around in every country, even in Italy, because Maria Montessori had patrons from you know, the aristocrats and the rich people in Italy, they saw this, and they say, okay, let's take this treasure, these incredible ideas for our kids. While the public power, so in the end, it's not the fault of Maria Montessori. She went where the money was, because she needed to apply her ideas. But for me, it's just a demonstration of the fact that the ideas are brilliant. They work. The idea work. So the people who can afford this, they say, okay, let's do it. So for me, it's not a problem. It's just the demonstration that the state school tend to, there are other problems. For me, that's my response, I would say.
Thank you. I think that helps us frame it quite well. Thanks for sharing that. And Jill has her hand up, so we'll go to you, Jill, if you can unmute.
Yes, I am grateful for that understanding and bringing in such a personal understanding of her to us. My interest is really, you know, expanding those Montessori principles to the larger audience of the talents within, cultivating from within outward, about the power of the peace education, the importance of the cosmic education. And I just wonder, through your research and stuff, do you think if she was alive today, would she be advocating for, like, no, let's just stick within the Montessori channels and it's just too hard to affect the big picture? Or would she be saying, now's the time, let's reach out to the state schools, let's integrate this wider philosophy, that's become now more popularized, it can have a wider range and application? I'm just curious.
Jill, that's the 1 million question in our life, I think. And that's probably the only thing I really don't forgive her for, because I think that that's the main question, and that's the main weak point of Maria Montessori, because during her life she was so strict on the idea of purity, no, the application in purity of sorry for my English, but you understand.
Yes.
Pure application without mixing with anything else, because she, and I can understand this, because she had a kind of a gem, so she was worried, and she was also paranoid maybe sometimes, but she said, you have to do just this, you have to do from the scratch, you have to do only with my method, because otherwise it doesn't work. That was the main point. So when I was reading this, I was very frustrated, because I was saying to myself, she had this visionary idea. She could have said to everyone, okay, let's do it in every way, with the socialists, with the normal school. She had to choose between the perfection of her ideas and the diffusion. I don't know if you can say that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the main point. And she chose the first way. And all along my book, my work, I was reproaching her inside myself, saying, okay, that was really stupid. That was bad. Why did she do that? And at a certain point, I started to doubt this position of my position, because I started to understand, to realize that probably even if she was completely different, like, no, okay, do what you want with my ideas. Now I don't patent anything, you do everything. There is still a problem, which is that the ideas of Maria Montessori are very radical. So they really challenge people. They are not easy to accept and so I started to doubt that the resistance to the let's say to the large application was only the control of Maria Montessori. Maybe it was also the fact that you have really to have different adults to accept this. So that's the main point. Today, I am afraid that if she was alive today, she would do the same mistakes. I think she was very strong in her position. So that's the main point. Another thing that I want to add is that I visit some Montessori school, but a little part of, I'm not an expert, but I saw something that struck me, is that the idea are grandiose, are incredible. The material is splendid. But you need something that is difficult to have. You need adults that accept to change themselves, to work, like to be a, let's say, I don't like psychoanalysis, but when you want to become a psychoanalyst, you have to work for years on yourself. That's probably the big problem, because if you have the mass school, the school of mass, you should train people not only on the material, but on themselves. No, right. to be humble, to listen to. So that's probably the great resistance. That's what I was trying, my poor English before. Maria Montessori made a mistake in trying to control every steps, but even if she was different, she was proposing something that require a big work. And I don't know how many adults are available to do this work. So that's the trick. That's a tricky point. How you can have a mass education of Montessori with a method that require a long and deep work on the teacher. That's for
well,
me.
That's why it will transform humanity, Christina. This was no small undertaking, right?
Yeah.
But
okay, we've got several people with hands up. John, if you have a quick comment, and then I'm going to go to Elaine.
It's so interesting that you brought that up, because I'm sure you came across this in your research. You talked about the spiritual preparation of the adult. And there's a particular translation of one of her quotes that says, right after she uses that term, the spiritual preparation, she follows that by saying, this is the most difficult part of the teacher's training, without which all the rest is of no avail. Like, ouch.
No, because I don't know what's the situation in America, but for example, in Italy and France, the two countries I know well, something that really, and I'm a person that I'm not, I'm not an expert of school, but something that I don't like today after all this work on Montessori is that when you talk to a young man or young woman who has, a degree in biology or mathematics, she said, okay, I'm trying to do this job or this job. If I don't succeed, I will be a teacher. Like, plan B, which is incredible, because being a teacher is the most difficult job on earth, I think. And in general, I see that for the young degree student out of this university, this is, when if you don't succeed in find a job, you go to school and you teach your biology and mathematics. So that's the main point. If we don't understand that teaching is, as Jonathan was saying, require a spiritual transformation, how can you apply Montessori with these people?
Yeah,
That's,
we could do a whole webinar just on that one piece. I would love that. Elaine, go ahead.
Thank you. I really have loved your book, and I learned a lot from it. And one thing that struck me was all the contradictions in her personality. That the humble and humility versus the very gregarious personality at times. And also, I wasn't aware that there were times when I think you described it as such low energy that she had to retire from the world. She had periods of that. And then she also had periods of very high energy where it seemed like she got so much done in such a small piece of time. The thought of calling her a genius so many times makes me wonder if you suspected there may have been something organic behind it, or do you believe it's just the life circumstances that she had that pushed her to this pendulum back and forth between high energy, high ego, low energy and introspection and quiet?
I never thought about being bipolar, something like this. I never thought about this, to be honest. It's true that she had a difficult moment when she really didn't get out of the bed and she got through some big episode of this. But no, I've never thought about this. That's very interesting. That's also why a biography is a work in process. Maybe we can discover this in the future.
You described some incidents where she was pretty highly emotional as well, and did some pretty rash.
And you use the right word. She was a living contradiction, Maria Montessori, because before we were talking about this part that really intrigued me of the spiritual transformation of the teacher. But at the same, so she kept saying that, but at the same time, something that I don't like in her character is she was very creative and very free in her approach to children. No? She entered the scene and she observed and she reacted, but she didn't accept this from her disciples and followers. She was absolutely mad if someone tried to change something, and that's a big contradiction, no? Because you invite your followers to open their mind and watch the children, but if they say, okay, if I watch this, no, you can't do that. That's the other big contradiction in her life, I think. No, she was the most creative and unpredictable person, but she didn't like this in other people. No, she tended to even to separate from followers that were too creative or too, and that's also something that I saw in some schools, or I heard about experience of parents of students, is that sometimes a Montessori teacher is so afraid of change something that it can be less effective than a creative teacher, no? Because if I got well, there is a pendulum movement between being super creative and be in the process with the kid and try to be like magically doing the same step and gesture than she said. And that's a big contradiction, because Montessori was never, if I got well, thought it was never a big theory, you can say. She was not abstract. She was very incarnated, no? She was not, creating a theory. She was saying the method is observing the child. So that's a big contradiction, no? When you are a Montessori, I will never be able to do it, but you have to be super creative, or you have to repeat the gesture of the founder. And when you repeat the gesture of the founder, sometimes you are a bad teacher, I think. You are rigid. How can a Montessori teacher be rigid? But I've listened to parents who said to me, I got the child out of the school because the teacher was, I don't know, scolding my child because he was talking to another child, no? Because you risk to be rigid, because you say, no, we have to do this way. So that contradiction is the good word, I would say.
This is our conundrum every single day, Christina, in every classroom, in every Montessori classroom. How far do we go? Where's the rigidity and the allegiance to what we know works versus the child we see in front of us and our creative vision for what we can do to support that child. So it's fascinating. I'm going to go to Karen. We really only have a couple minutes left. I knew this would happen. The hour would go too fast. Karen, go ahead.
Thank you. No, I just love this question. I taught in public and traditional private school for the first 10 years of my teaching career. Then I ended up in Montessori with my children in Montessori, and I taught at a middle school adolescent program. And until I had the training, I really didn't understand why people were doing what they were doing in their classrooms. And I'm at a point now where I'm wanting to do research. So I'm starting a doctorate in Montessori research soon. And I think it's so interesting because I think that what she discovered was a paradigm shift in the way that you connect with children and what they have as a potential that I have never seen in other approaches to education. And I don't know if you're familiar with the book, The Dancing Woolly Masters. And anyway, I read it in my master's program in the 80s. And the Eastern philosophy, the shift of moving from an authoritarian way of doing education to an agent-based, let the child be the agent kind of thing, is part of that. And there's so many parallels and metaphors that are in quantum mechanical philosophical projections, and that is new, compared to the Newtonian ways of doing things in linear ways, et cetera. And the whole idea of consciousness and mindfulness, the United States has become much more open to learning about that from yoga and that kind of thing. And so there's something that she caught on to that I feel is something about our human nature. And in the Montessori environments, she was able to help children develop that. But it requires those materials. It requires that teacher to be, I know what you're saying, trained, and how do you become, it's part of your becoming as well. It's very unique, but I think that it could really make a difference in the world of education. But again, thank you again for writing this book. It will help communicate more to more people about this.
I think thank you, Karen. I think we all second that. Thank you to Christina for writing the book, for bringing it to our attention, and for agreeing to share some of your time with us so late in the evening. I say that you are currently in Greece, and so we appreciate you staying up late and helping us to understand a little bit more about your book and your process. And I would love to invite you back again at some point because there's so many more questions. This has just been a fascinating exploration of the person and your work, Christina. So I thank you so much.
Let's do it again.
Okay, that will not be hard to do other than your schedule. We will work around you, but I think there are a lot more questions. I know I have, and I'm sure that our participants are also fascinated by what you have brought to us. So thank you again. I want to thank everyone for being here today with us and sharing another hour of your busy days with us as well. I appreciate you being here, and on behalf of the Montessori Foundation and IMC, I'm happy to have had you here today, and we will be back again next week.
Okay.
Okay.
Ciao.
Oh.